The year was 58 BC. Rome was burning, not literally, but politically. In the streets, mobs were rioting. In the Senate, accusations of treason flew like daggers. At the center of it all stood two men locked in a battle that would determine the fate of the Roman Republic. One was Cicero, defender of tradition and reason. The other was Clodius Pulcher, a radical populist who used street politics and public spectacle to tear down the establishment. Sound familiar? What happened in Rome 2,000 years ago is happening again today, with figure like Charlie Kirk. This is the story of how the ancient Rome's greatest cultural war predicted the battle we are fighting in our societies today.
In the age of social media, there was a new political figure, Charlie Kirk, a provocateur, a media personality, and an outsider who has used his platform to challenge the very institutions of power that once dominated American life. His message is simple: the system is broken, and it's up to the people to dismantle it. Kirk made a name for himself through Turning Point USA, his organization designed to take on what he calls the left-wing establishment in academia and politics. He argues that universities, once halls of learning, have become factories of indoctrination, churning out a generation of thinkers who are, in his view, poisoned by leftist ideology. His message resonates, especially with young people. They're frustrated with the current political system. They're disillusioned with what they see as the failure of traditional institutions to represent their interest. And Kirk gives them a voice. His rhetoric is sharp, direct, and confrontational. He doesn't just criticize the establishment, he tears it down. But here's where it gets interesting. Charlie Kirk's story isn't as new as it seems. What if I told you that his approach, his style, and even his political message has been used before? Over 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Roman Republic, a man named Marcus Tullius Cicero fought a very similar battle. Cicero wasn't fighting against the same system Kirk targeted, but like Kirk, he believed that the Roman Republic was in danger. He too saw powerful elites threatening the future of society. The difference? Cicero didn't want to destroy the system. He wanted to protect it and strengthen it through reason, law, and tradition. Where Kirk raised his voice from the outside, Cicero defended from within. What happens when we compare these two men? Separated by centuries, but united by a similar mission. Can we draw lessons from the ancient world to better understand today's political struggles? Let's find out.
Please do well to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't, as an encouragement for more of this kind of content.
Cicero's career was built on defending the Republic from the very forces that sought to tear it apart. He believed that a republic could only survive through a commitment to reason, law, and a well-educated citizenry. For him, the institutions of Rome, the Senate, the legal system, and the philosophical traditions were the pillars upon which civilization rested. He didn't seek to tear these down. He believed that they had to be perfected, but not destroyed. Cicero was no stranger to political agitation. He understood the importance of rhetoric. His speeches were designed not just to persuade, but to reflect the reasoned, structured arguments that form the basis of Roman governance. In his view, the Republic was a delicate system, and it was the role of intellectuals like him to defend it from radical populist forces. This, of course, brings us to a stark contrast between the two figures, Kirk and Cicero. Where Kirk thrives in the world of social media, using quick, emotional sound bites to rally his audience, Cicero relied on the power of well-crafted speeches and written works that appealed to reason, tradition, and the moral philosophy of his time. His oratory was intricate, layered, and meant to be studied, not simply reacted to. It was designed for a time when political discourse was a measured, intellectual exercise. Kirk, on the other hand, is an outsider in every sense. He operates through an organization that bypasses the traditional political structure. His identity, much like his rhetoric, is built on challenging the elites, criticizing the establishment, and presenting himself as the voice of the real America. The system, in his view, is broken, and his followers are called to tear it down. But Cicero? He was an insider, fiercely protective of the Roman system. Despite being a new man in Roman politics, the first in his family to become a senator, Cicero saw the Senate and its traditions as the very heart of Roman society. His greatest fear was not that the system would remain static, but that it would be overrun by populist figures who would use emotion, not reason, to gain power. To Cicero, these populists were a direct threat to everything that made Rome great. And that brings us to a fascinating historical parallel. In ancient Rome, there was a figure who could be seen as the precursor to Charlie Kirk, a populist provocateur who didn't operate within the confines of traditional political institutions. That man was Publius Clodius Pulcher. Like Kirk, Clodius was a master of public manipulation. He was a figure who understood the power of spectacle and agitation, using street-level politics to rally the masses against the Roman elite. Clodius's rise to power was built on his ability to manipulate the emotions of the people. He would frequently use public spectacle and scandal to gain favor with the masses, portraying himself as a champion of the common people against the aristocracy. His methods were violent and disruptive, but the essence of his political appeal was rooted in populist rhetoric, exactly like Kirk's. But while Clodius may seem like a distant historical figure, his ideological counterpart Cicero is a direct reflection of Kirk's opposition. Cicero's political philosophy was rooted in his belief that the Republic, as it was constituted, was worth defending no matter the cost. His opposition to figures like Clodius was not just about personal rivalry. It was about the survival of Rome's institutions. Cicero's speeches against populist figures were a defense of reason and tradition. When Clodius challenged the Senate, Cicero responded with carefully crafted orations that framed Clodius as a madman, a threat to the very foundations of Roman society. For Cicero, there was no room for compromise. The forces of radical change, represented by figures like Clodius, would ultimately destroy Rome, and it was his duty to stop them. The debate between figures like Kirk and Cicero, and between Clodius and Cicero, is not a new one. It's a tension that has existed for centuries, the conflict between those who seek to preserve tradition and those who wish to radically alter society. The populist agitators who challenge the status quo will always rise, and the intellectuals who defend the existing order will always fight back. This cycle is as old as politics itself. But here's the twist. Cicero's fight against populism, like Kirk's fight against the left-wing establishment, was ultimately doomed. The Roman Republic did not survive the rise of populist leaders like Clodius and later Julius Caesar. Despite his efforts, Cicero couldn't stop the forces of radical change from overthrowing the system. The Republic fell, and with it, the intellectual elite that had spent centuries defending it. The same cycle is playing out today. As Charlie Kirk's rhetoric challenges the intellectual establishments of America, as populist forces continue to rise in many parts of the world, we are left with the same question that plagued Rome. How does a society balance the need for bold change with the wisdom of tradition? Is it better to tear down the old system and build something new? Or is the true solution found in protecting and perfecting the institutions that have been built over time? The answer, as history shows us, is never simple. The tension between change and tradition is the eternal political struggle. As we reflect on the legacies of both Charlie Kirk and Marcus Tullius Cicero, we can see that the debate between those who challenge the system and those who protect it is timeless. Charlie Kirk's voice may no longer be part of today's political conversation following his recent passing, but the arguments he championed, the push to reform, to challenge traditional power structures, are far from gone. His call for bold change still echoes in the minds of those who once followed him, much like the populist figures of ancient Rome who sought to shake the system to its core. But Cicero's lesson is just as crucial. The defense of institutions, tradition, and reasoned debate is equally important in any society. Whether we are pushing for change or preserving what we have, we must always ask ourselves how to strike a balance between progress and stability. In the end, the fight between the outsider and the insider, the reformer and the defender of tradition, will continue. But as we look back at history, at both Kirk and Cicero, we are reminded that while the names and faces may change, the struggle to understand how best to shape society remains a question that will always demand our attention. Charlie Kirk's passing leaves a gap in the conversation, but his impact, like Cicero's, reminds us that ideas never truly disappear. They live on in the debates we continue to have, in the paths we choose to take, and in the societies we work to build. The question remains, how do we balance change with tradition? The answer may lie somewhere between the voices of agitators and intellectuals, both of whom have shaped the world in ways we are still trying to understand. Thanks for watching.